A 3-kilometer walk before sunrise on an empty rural road felt extensive and somewhat frightening. Bonnie realized that traversing it solo wasn't particularly secure. But the pepper spray resting in her jacket pocket gave her comfort. She was aware that she could protect herself should unexpected peril arise. Hi, my name is Jeremy, and this is the True Crime Chronicles channel. Subscribe for the channel and we'll move on to history. On the morning of September 28, 1994, 18-year-old Bonnie Craig woke at 5 a.m., prepared herself, loaded her notebooks into her backpack, and, as was her routine, made her way to the bus stop. Bonnie departed before the sun was up. She faced a 45-minute journey to the bus stop and preferred to get to the university slightly early. Bonnie Christine Craig entered the world in Calgary, Canada, on March 30, 1976. Her biological father played a minor role in her upbringing. Bonnie and her older sibling Jason were brought up by their stepfather, Gary Campbell, who cherished the children and embraced them as his own from their very first encounter. At the age of 5, Bonnie welcomed a new brother, Adam, into the family, courtesy of Karen and Gary. And a sister, Samantha, arrived 2 years thereafter. The younger sister turned into Bonnie's cherished playmate. She took joy in outfitting Samantha in fairy tale gowns and imparting to her all the knowledge she had acquired. The family patriarch, Gary, had a long-standing career in the oil and gas sector and was frequently relocated to various locations. Bonnie was accustomed to changing schools, having attended 6 elementary schools and 2 high schools, which taught her to adapt to new environments and forge friendships with ease. From the sun-drenched locales of California with a backyard pool to the snowy expanses of Anchorage, then to West Texas, and ultimately returning to the picturesque views of Alaska. However, the unexpected divorce of Karen and Gary marked a significant shift for the children. Now, Samantha and Adam alternated weeks between their father and mother. Bonnie dedicated herself to her academic pursuits. She was also involved in swimming and diving teams, pursued horseback riding, penned poetry, and contributed to the school orchestra with her violin and viola skills. Yet, life continued to present her with unforeseen challenges. Just as she was reconciling with her parents' divorce, Bonnie's dearest friend perished in a drunk driving incident. This tragedy profoundly altered Bonnie's perspective on life. She pledged to abstain from alcohol and avoid driving, preferring instead to navigate by foot or use public transit. Her aversion to driving was so strong that she chose not to obtain a driver's license, fearing involvement in a vehicular accident. Craig also initiated a campaign against drunk driving at her high school. Upon completing her secondary education, Bonnie pursued a degree in psychology at the University of Alaska in Anchorage. Her partner, Cameron Miyazaki, was immersed in architectural studies at the University of California, Berkeley. They maintained their connection through frequent phone conversations and email exchanges. As her home became increasingly populated due to her mother's relationship with Jim Foster, who brought along 3 kids of his own, Bonnie opted for more autonomy by relocating to her stepfather's residence. This move was strategic, as it placed her a mere 15-minute car ride from her college. Adhering to her vows, she utilized public transportation to attend classes 3 times a week, relishing the brisk walks to the bus station under the fresh Alaskan skies. Bonnie also held a part-time job at Sam's Club. Her life was full of passions and grounds for optimism. On the morning of September 28, 1994, Bonnie departed from her stepfather's residence towards the bus stop, setting off for her university classes. 9 hours afterward, a fellow student from the University of Anchorage, while capturing landscape photographs on a walking path in Chugach State Park, approximately 15 miles from Bonnie's home, stumbled upon a scene. Mid-September presents an ideal opportunity to appreciate the park's beauty, thanks to Alaska's relatively warm temperatures, extended daylight, and stunning vistas. As this student adjusted her lens for a scenic shot, her gaze was drawn to an anomaly in the water near the cliff's edge. A strikingly blue item floating. Moving closer for a clearer view, she encountered a chilling sight. In the shallow waters, the motionless form of a woman floated, face down and in an odd posture, fully dressed. This section of McHugh Creek, challenging to access except from the cliff's peak or by navigating the streambed for miles, suggested a tragic accident. The initial assumption was that the individual had accidentally slipped from above, leading to a fatal fall. This theory was the first conclusion drawn by the responding officers. The unfortunate woman, perhaps captivated by the park's tranquility and beauty, lost her footing and met her untimely demise. The remains were taken to the coroner's office for an examination to ascertain the cause of the injuries and to facilitate identification. The autopsy findings revealed that the young woman had drowned and also suffered significant head trauma, likely from a fall off a cliff. A distinctive class ring, often worn by graduates as a symbol of their educational achievements, enabled detectives to identify the victim as Bonnie Craig. The subsequent step involved reaching out to the victim's family to verify their initial findings. The devastating news of her daughter's demise reached Karen during a brief getaway with her new companion Jim to a quaint port town for a relative's wedding. This was a special trip where Jim had spent his childhood, and Karen was set to meet Jim's parents for the first time. Engrossed in the company of her soon-to-be in-laws, sharing laughter and stories, Karen was blissfully unaware of the grim fate that had claimed her beloved Bonnie. They were aboard a yacht when at 3 a.m., a knock on the door shattered the peace. Confronted with the harrowing news of her daughter, Karen initially dismissed it as a sick prank. The thought of her conscientious daughter being alone in the park, rather than attending her college classes, was inconceivable and would naturally devastate any parent who has nurtured concern for their child from birth. However, Karen was far from a typical parent. For the past 3 years, she had served undercover for the Anchorage Police Department, having graduated from the police academy and specializing in narcotics distribution cases. Her problem-solving skills earned her the deep respect of her peers. Despite her dedication to her profession, Karen's commitment to her family was unwavering. Yet, with her investigative background, she instinctively doubted the initial assessment of Bonnie's death as an accident. Karen's priority became to have the investigation transferred to her own department, convinced there was more to her daughter's tragic end. Overwhelmed by sorrow, Karen sought specifics on the tragic event. She questioned if there were indications of sexual violence, to which the authorities noted the victim's clothed state, a detail that offered no definitive conclusions. Karen was aware that a deeper investigation was necessary. She couldn't reconcile how her daughter, who was meticulous about her commitments and lacked a driver's license, could end up isolated miles from home during academic hours. The absence of Bonnie's personal items at the scene further mystified Karen, suggesting to her a possible inclination within the police force to hastily categorize the incident as an unfortunate mishap. Yet, Karen was not prepared to relent in her pursuit of the truth. Taking the earliest flight back to Alaska for the formal identification, Karen clung to a sliver of hope that perhaps there had been a mistake, that it wasn't her Bonnie who had perished. The most harrowing moment was upon her as she entered the morgue, a scene straight out of a cinematic narrative, but starkly real. Approaching the gurney shrouded with a white sheet, she hesitantly unveiled the face of the deceased to find her daughter, Bonnie, in a state of eternal rest. It was unequivocally her child. Instinctively, both as a bereaved mother and as a law enforcement officer, Karen felt certain this wasn't a simple accident. When she clasped her daughter's hand, noting the bruised and swollen knuckles, she demanded the police document what she perceived as defensive injuries. This evidence, she believed, was crucial, especially as it represented perhaps the last opportunity to collect any leads before her daughter's burial. Despite the police's skepticism, attributing the injuries to a fall, Karen resolved to adopt a different approach in her quest for justice. Karen reached out to her media contacts, initiating a public awareness campaign. The story of a young, vibrant university student found deceased in a creek captured the attention of all local media outlets, spreading the news far more swiftly than the detectives could manage. Karen attempted to engage her superior, hoping for assistance as precious time was fading, but was informed that the matter fell beyond their operational scope. The following day, an emotionally charged gathering took place at the funeral home as Karen, Jim, Gary, Jason, Adam, and Samantha came together to bid their final farewells to Bonnie. The stark contrast between Bonnie's erstwhile vivacity and her now inert form weighed heavily on everyone, particularly her siblings, who sought to pay their respects one last time. Faced with the urgency to select a casket, Karen, ever cautious of preserving any latent evidence, opted for a stone crypt, considering the possibility of future exhumation in light of new insights. Despite her efforts to seek justice through media engagement, the endeavor seemed to complicate matters more than it aided. Summoned to the police station, Karen was urged to desist from labeling the incident as criminal to avoid obstructing the ongoing investigation. The police were methodically examining all leads, including Gary Campbell, Bonnie's stepfather, as a potential suspect. Their suspicion was piqued by discrepancies in Gary's alibi and reported tensions between him and Bonnie, a revelation that left Karen reeling with disbelief. The notion that Gary, who had lovingly raised Bonnie, could be implicated in such a tragedy was unfathomable. Complications escalated when Karen visited Gary's residence to retrieve her daughter's effects, only to discover Bonnie's room locked. Gary's accusation of theft against Karen for removing a photograph of Bonnie without his consent underscored the tension between them. He insisted on preserving his memories of the daughter he cherished, further muddling an already complex situation with suspicions and grievances. The untimely demise of Bonnie deeply impacted her younger sibling Samantha, who was merely 12 years old when the tragedy occurred. Samantha began to face difficulties in school and found it hard to focus at home. She used to share everything with Bonnie and felt utterly adrift without her guidance. The confusion stemming from her elder sister's passing even led her to question her trust in her own father, leaving her uncertain about what to accept as true. One evening, as Gary tucked Samantha into bed, she gazed at him with eyes brimming with fear and questioned whether he was responsible for Bonnie's death. Taken aback and wounded by the suspicion, Gary regained his composure and reassured Samantha that he would never cause harm to her sister, a statement that soothed the young girl and helped her to trust in her father's words. Subsequently, the police conducted interviews with Adam and Samantha, who, without collusion, both affirmed that on the day Bonnie passed away, their father, Gary, had been present at home, leaving for work only after the sister had departed. His alibi was corroborated by work colleagues and supervisors, dispelling the doubts cast upon him. The post-mortem examination revealed that Bonnie had been deceased for several hours before her discovery, with drowning being the cause of death. Additionally, she had sustained severe head injuries, possibly from a fall off a cliff or from being struck with a heavy object. The authorities took a keen interest in determining how the victim had arrived at the park, carefully scrutinizing the area. Initially deemed an accident, Bonnie's death came under scrutiny when a detective, searching near the cliff's brink on hands and knees, discovered a leaf stained with a single droplet of blood a few feet from the edge. Upon testing, it was confirmed to belong to Bonnie, prompting inquiries into the presence of the blood if her injuries were sustained from the fall. This discovery led investigators to contemplate the notion that Bonnie's fall may not have been an accident, but rather the result of someone else's actions. Detectives were aware that cracking this case would be difficult and necessitated cautious action on their part. Consequently, they refrained from notifying both the press and the family regarding their suspicions of criminal activity. This strategy was deliberate, aiming not to tip off the culprit, pondering over the possibility that it might be an individual close to the young girl who had passed away. Thus, the surge of information sparked by Karen could potentially obstruct the investigative process. The funeral of Bonnie Craig gathered all who loved her: family, friends, acquaintances, as well as her boyfriend from California, who came to say his final goodbyes. He was deeply saddened, as he could never have imagined such a tragic end to their story together. Bonnie's biological father, Gordon Craig, who had not been actively involved in her upbringing, also attended to bid farewell to his daughter, showing that, despite everything, he still felt a bond with her. The service was held in a church that Bonnie occasionally attended. It was a moment for everyone who knew this cheerful and bright girl to honor her memory for the last time, share fond memories of her, and support each other during this difficult time. A week after Bonnie's passing, the silence from the police prompted Karen to initiate her own investigation. She meticulously followed her daughter's entire pre-dawn journey from Gary's residence, attempting to grasp what Bonnie might have felt that morning, her possible thoughts, and the details that might have caught her attention. For the first time, Karen perceived the route's inherent danger, a path her daughter traversed multiple times a week, flanked by towering trees on both sides, where the darkness made it seem as though each tree could conceal a potential threat, be it a wild animal or a menacing individual. Karen pondered why Bonnie never requested her stepfather to drive her to the bus stop, and why she kept silent about the treacherous path she took regularly. She then realized Bonnie's determination mirrored her own. Her daughter didn't want to cause worry and sought to assert her independence. Bonnie carried pepper spray, believing in her ability to fend off an assailant. Additionally, from a young age, Karen instilled in Bonnie the principle of never accepting car rides from strangers, trusting that her daughter would only accept a lift from someone familiar and trusted. When the walk yielded no clues, Karen drove around the vicinity, searching for any of Bonnie's possessions that might provide a lead in the investigation. She scoured ditches and bushes, exploring every possible hideout, yet found nothing. The onset of 1995 brought Karen to phone the sergeant overseeing Bonnie's case, directly inquiring about the possibility of her daughter having been sexually assaulted, compelling the detective to divulge the truth. Karen received permission to view her daughter's autopsy findings, with the condition of maintaining utmost confidentiality. Bonnie was indeed discovered fully clothed, and a medical examination revealed the presence of male DNA from a swab taken, along with noted injuries to her genital area. This critical information remained confidential as the source of the DNA had yet to be identified. All men with any link to Bonnie underwent questioning, and their DNA samples were collected, yet no matches had been found by that point. Witnesses reported seeing Bonnie on her way to the bus stop that morning, but none could confirm seeing her board any bus. The question then arose: how did Bonnie find herself in Chugach Park, situated more than 10 miles from her residence, and for what reason? The investigators theorized that Craig had been assaulted during her solitary walk in the darkness. Nearly a year after Bonnie's passing, Jim's family extended an invitation to him and Karen for a week-long yacht voyage, aiming to provide a change of environment. Despite Karen's reluctance due to the painful connection between sailing and her daughter's tragic end, she recognized it as a chance to temporarily escape her sorrow. Having spent the year engulfed in grief, investigation, and anticipation for any news regarding her daughter, she saw this as an opportunity for a brief respite from her worries. Karen, Jim, his brother Ken, and Ken's wife collectively relished the ocean's vistas and sounds throughout the week. Upon their return to dock, they were met with the news that the Coast Guard had been attempting to contact them regarding an emergency within their family. Karen's mind immediately raced back to the previous year's agony, fearing the worst for another one of her children. However, this time, the distressing news was directed at Jim and Ken, who learned of their father's sudden death from a heart attack. This was especially shocking as they had just celebrated his 63rd birthday, during which he appeared to be in good health. This incident marked the second time a boating trip resulted in ominous news for the family. Karen's other children faced tremendous challenges, grappling with the loss of their sister and nearly losing their mother to an all-consuming quest for justice. The investigation into Bonnie's death took precedence, leaving them without the necessary attention and care. Karen felt that abandoning her pursuit of the truth would be a betrayal to Bonnie, even as the possibility loomed that the case might remain unsolved. As the years unfolded, Karen witnessed her children maturing and welcomed the joy of becoming a grandmother. Amidst these life changes, her youngest son Adam underwent a cornea transplant to address his worsening vision, unfortunately resulting in blindness in one eye. Karen's personal life saw its own shifts. She married Jim, but after 3 years, their marriage ended in separation. The family faced further sorrows with the passing of Karen's brother and later their mother, who battled cancer. Throughout these highs and lows, the profound grief of losing Bonnie remained an indelible shadow over Karen's life. The family's ordeal was marked by countless sleepless nights, anxiety, rage, and profound depression. On January 5, 2007, 12 years after Bonnie's death, Karen embarked on a global journey with a friend. While in a hotel on a quaint island in the Philippines, an email from an unknown sender titled Bonnie caught her attention, making her heart race. The case, still officially unsolved, had been reinvigorated by a fresh investigative team. Utilizing a new database equipped with advanced technology, detectives re-examined the DNA sample found on Bonnie and matched it to a man then incarcerated in New Hampshire for a spree of armed robberies. This individual, Kenneth Dion, born in 1969 and 25 years old at Bonnie's time of death, had only recently been linked to the case after his DNA was entered into the system at the end of 2006. Dion, with a background in martial arts and accolades from competitions, had served in the U.S. Army until his discharge due to drug use. Known to carry distinctive weapons in his vehicle, such as a say, a 3-section staff, and nunchucks, Dion had a history of arrests, and had been free for only a few months following a probation violation before Bonnie's tragic death. In May 2007, Kenneth Dion was indicted for the assault and homicide of Bonnie Craig. He was accused of assaulting her on her way to the bus stop hitting her with a weapon used in martial arts, perpetrating sexual assault, and then, to conceal the evidence of his crime, discarded her body from a cliff in the park. As details about Kenneth came to light, further information surfaced, showing his lengthy criminal record with 18 convictions, including 10 misdemeanors and 8 felonies. Had Kenneth's DNA been submitted to the database sooner, the case could have been solved more quickly. Upon his extradition, Kenneth submitted numerous pretrial motions, which greatly postponed the proceedings and inflicted significant distress on Karen's family. Each court session was as though they were losing Bonnie anew, with old wounds being torn open. Eventually, after 17 years, on October 31, 2011, Kenneth Dion received a 124-year prison sentence, 99 years for murder and 25 years for assault, with the possibility of parole at 80. Despite Bonnie's physical fitness and her possession of pepper spray, Kenneth managed to subdue her. The precise details of Bonnie's fate on that early September morning are still a mystery, yet her passing has deeply affected many around her. Bonnie's younger sister Samantha took up a role as a 911 dispatcher, while her elder brother Jason obtained a qualification as a paramedic. Karen, unable to come to terms with her daughter's loss, authored a book named Justice for Bonnie, sharing their experiences in an attempt to achieve closure and pay tribute to her daughter's memory. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.